Some people think quiet means weak. They're about to learn the difference. The crack of Destiny Thompson's karate trophy breaking under Brooke Hamilton's designer heel echoed through Westfield Prep's chemistry lab. 23 students held their breath as the scholarship girl knelt to pick up the pieces. "Oops," Brooke smiled, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "So clumsy of me." Destiny's fingers closed around the broken golden figure, a relic from a life Brooke knew she was desperate to hide. The same life that could destroy everything if the truth came out. "You know what, Destiny?" Brooke's hand shot out, the slap sharp and deliberate across Destiny's cheek. "Some people just don't belong here." The silence stretched like a held breath. Phones appeared. Someone whispered "World Star." Destiny remained perfectly still, her breathing controlled, measured. What none of them knew, what would make Brooke's face drain of color in exactly 4 hours, was that breaking things had always been Destiny's specialty, just not the way they expected. The aftermath of the slap rippled through advanced chemistry like a stone thrown into still water. Students exchanged glances, thumbs already moving across phone screens. Mrs. Peterson, their teacher, had conveniently stepped out for her third coffee break of the morning. Destiny rose slowly, the broken trophy pieces clutched in her palm. A thin line of blood traced down from where the sharp edge had cut her skin. She didn't wipe it away. "Miss Thompson," came a voice from the doorway. Vice Principal Morrison had returned, his timing impeccable as always, but only when it served certain students. "Perhaps you could clean up this mess before it stains the floor?" 23 pairs of eyes watched as Destiny nodded silently. "Of course, sir." Brooke's smirk widened. She'd learned years ago how to orchestrate these moments, how to position herself just right so that authority arrived at precisely the wrong second. Her father's donations to the school board hadn't hurt either. "It's so admirable," Brooke announced to the growing crowd, "how some people just accept their role." Jake Williams, Destiny's lab partner, started to stand. "That's not fair?" Brooke's laugh was crystalline, practiced. "Life isn't fair, Jake. Some of us are here because we belong. Others—" Her gaze swept over Destiny's second-hand uniform, the carefully mended tear in her sleeve. "Others are here on charity." Destiny's shoulders tensed just for a fraction of a second. Her stance shifted, weight distributing evenly between her feet. It was subtle, automatic, like muscle memory awakening from a long sleep. Only someone trained would recognize the defensive posture for what it was. But no one in that room was trained. No one except Destiny herself. "I mean, look at her," Brooke continued, emboldened by the audience. Her voice carried that particular tone wealthy teenagers perfected, casual cruelty wrapped in silk. Standing there like she can actually do something about it. The cut on Destiny's palm had stopped bleeding, but she hadn't unclenched her fist. Inside her closed hand, the broken trophy grew warm against her skin. Once upon a time, that trophy had sat on a shelf in a house with marble counters and a 3-car garage. Once upon a time, there had been dozens just like it. "You know what I think?" Brooke stepped closer, close enough that her perfume something French and expensive mixed with the chemical smell of the lab. "I think some people have gotten too comfortable here, forgotten their place." A murmur ran through the gathered students. Phones lifted higher. Someone whispered about going live on Instagram. Destiny's breathing had changed, though no one noticed. The shallow, quick breaths of someone on the verge of panic had shifted into something deeper, controlled. Each inhale lasted exactly 4 counts, each exhale the same. It was a technique her mother had taught her years ago, back when Sarah Thompson coached champions instead of mopping their floors. "I wonder," Brooke mused, circling now like a predator who'd caught the scent of fear. What would happen if everyone knew the real story about the Thompson family? About how far the mighty have fallen? Jake stepped forward again. "Brooke, seriously, Back off. Oh, Jake. Brooke's attention shifted to him like a searchlight finding a new target. Sweet, naive Jake. You have no idea who you're defending, do you? No idea what she's hiding? The words hit Destiny like physical blows, because Brooke did know. Brooke had been there for all of it. The bankruptcy, the foreclosure, the night Destiny's father disappeared rather than face what his business failures had cost their family. Brooke had been her best friend right up until the scandal broke, right up until associating with the Thompsons became social suicide. People like her, Brooke continued, her voice dropping to a stage whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the room. They think they can just reinvent themselves, show up at a place like Westfield and pretend the past doesn't exist. Destiny's free hand moved to her side, fingers brushing against her ribs where old muscle memory lived. Her core tightened automatically, the way it had thousands of times before. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. Balance comes from the center, baby. Everything else is just movement. But the past always catches up, Brooke said, stopping directly in front of Destiny. Doesn't it, champion? The word hit the room like a dropped bomb. Several students looked confused, but a few, the ones old enough to remember sports headlines from 5 years ago, began to piece things together. Destiny's mask slipped for just an instant. Pain flashed across her features, raw and unguarded. It was the same expression she'd worn the day she'd packed away her karate gi for the last time. The day her mother had traded her coaching whistle for a janitor's keyring. Nothing to say? Brooke pressed. No denial? No righteous anger? The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken history. Around them, the crowd pressed closer, sensing blood in the water. Someone's phone buzzed with notifications. The video was already circulating. When Destiny finally spoke, her voice was quiet, steady. What do you want, Brooke? What do I want? Brooke's smile was razor sharp. I want honesty. I want everyone here to know exactly who they're sharing a classroom with. You want to humiliate me. I want to give you a chance to prove you still have some fight left. Brooke's eyes glittered with something that might have been excitement, might have been malice. Unless you're too diminished. The challenge hung in the air like smoke. Destiny could feel the weight of every gaze in the room, could sense the phones recording every word, every breath, every heartbeat of this moment that would define the rest of her time at Westfield. She looked down at her bleeding palm, at the broken pieces of a trophy that represented everything she used to be. Then she looked up at Brooke, her former best friend, her current tormentor, the girl who knew exactly which wounds to press to make her bleed. What exactly are you asking me to do? Brooke's smile widened until it showed teeth. Just a friendly sparring match, after school, unless you're afraid to show everyone what the great Destiny Thompson has become. The crowd pressed closer. The phones angled for better shots, and somewhere in the building's lower level, a woman in a janitor's uniform paused in her mopping to glance toward the ceiling, sensing trouble she couldn't name. The chemistry lab had transformed into an arena. Word traveled fast at Westfield Prep, faster than wildfire, faster than scandal, faster than the kind of social media storm that could destroy reputations in real time. Students materialized from neighboring classrooms like moths drawn to flame. A sparring match? Jake's voice cracked with disbelief. Brooke, what the hell is wrong with you? Nothing's wrong with me. Brooke's tone remained conversational, but her eyes never left Destiny's face. I'm just offering our scholarship friend here a chance to show us what she's really made of. You know, since she used to be so accomplished. The way she said accomplished made it sound like a disease. Destiny's fingers had finally loosened around the broken trophy pieces, but her stance remained perfectly balanced. Her weight sat low in her hips, knees slightly bent. The kind of posture that looked casual to untrained eyes but could explode into motion in a heartbeat. I remember when Destiny Thompson was a name that mattered, Brooke continued, her voice carrying to every corner of the packed lab. Sports Illustrated did a feature on her when she was 14. The karate prodigy. 3-time national champion. They called her unstoppable. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Phones pivoted, zooming in on Destiny's face as recognition dawned on some of the older students. "Holy shit," someone whispered. "She's that girl. The one who just disappeared." "Disappeared might be the wrong word," Brooke said, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "More like fell. Hard. Isn't that right, Destiny?" Destiny's breathing remained controlled, but something had shifted in her posture. Her shoulders had drawn back almost imperceptibly, her chin lifted a fraction of an inch. For just a moment, she looked less like a scholarship student trying to blend in and more like someone who had once commanded attention in front of thousands. "You don't know anything about what happened to my family," Destiny said quietly. "Don't I?" Brooke pulled out her phone, fingers dancing across the screen. "Bankruptcy filing, public record. House foreclosure, also public record. Your father's business partner fleeing the country with investor funds, very public record." She turned the phone toward the crowd, showing what looked like newspaper headlines. "Should I keep going?" The cruelty was surgical in its precision. Every word chosen to inflict maximum damage, delivered with the kind of casual malice that only former best friends could achieve. They knew exactly where to cut. "The point is," Brooke continued, pocketing her phone, "some people think they can just show up here and pretend the past doesn't exist. Think they can take advantage of Westfield's generosity without proving they deserve it. And you think a fight proves something?" Destiny's voice remained steady, but her hands had moved to her sides in a way that looked natural but felt like preparation. "I think action proves everything." Brooke stepped closer, close enough that her next words were meant for Destiny alone, though the phones caught every syllable. "I think it's time everyone knew who you really are now. What your family has become, where your mother works every night while you sit in classes you can't afford." The words hit like physical blows. Because Brooke knew. She knew about the late shifts, about Sarah Thompson trading her Olympic coaching credentials for minimum wage and a set of keys to clean the very gym where she'd once trained champions. She knew because she'd been there through all of it, until association became liability. "Unless you're too afraid," Brooke added, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Too diminished." The crowd pressed closer, sensing blood. Someone had started a live stream, the viewer count climbing steadily as news of the confrontation spread beyond Westfield's walls. Destiny closed her eyes for exactly 3 seconds. When she opened them, something fundamental had changed. The careful invisibility she'd cultivated for 3 years had cracked, revealing glimpses of the girl who had once stood on podiums accepting gold medals. "What are your terms?" she asked. The question sent electricity through the gathered students. Phones lifted higher. The live stream viewer count doubled. Brooke's smile was triumphant. "Simple. We settle this after school. Gymnasium, no rules, no referees, just you and me." She paused, letting the moment build. "When you lose, and we both know you will, you stand up in front of the entire school and tell everyone the truth about your family. All of it. The bankruptcy, the lies, the charity case act. Then you leave Westfield. Forever." The stakes landed like a slap. Murmurs erupted throughout the crowd. Someone whistled low. The live stream comments exploded with fire emojis and shocked faces. "And when you lose?" Destiny's question was so quiet it barely carried, but in the sudden hush, every word was audible. Brooke's laugh was like breaking crystal. "If I lose, which won't happen, I'll donate $5,000 to the scholarship fund and issue a public apology. But that's not going to be necessary." "Recorded?" "Everything's already being recorded." Brooke gestured to the dozens of phones pointed in their direction. "No backing out, no excuses. The whole school will know by tonight." Destiny looked around the lab, taking in the eager faces, the predatory excitement, The way her classmates had transformed into a mob hungry for blood sport. These people who had ignored her for 3 years were suddenly fascinated, suddenly invested in her destruction. Her gaze found Jake, whose face was creased with worry. Found Mrs. Peterson in the doorway, who had returned just in time to witness the aftermath but not early enough to prevent it. Found the lens of a phone broadcasting this moment to hundreds, maybe thousands of strangers. "Destiny, don't," Jake said urgently. "This is insane. She's trying to—" "I accept." The words cut through the noise like a blade. The lab fell silent except for the soft pinging of notifications as the video spread across social platforms. Brooke's smile faltered for just an instant surprise, maybe, or the first whisper of uncertainty. She'd expected pleading, begging, tears. She hadn't expected acceptance delivered with the calm of someone who had nothing left to lose. 3:30, Brooke said, recovering quickly. "Gymnasium. Don't be late." "I won't be." As the bell rang and students began to file out, chattering excitedly about the upcoming confrontation, Destiny remained standing in the same spot. Her hands hung loose at her sides, her breathing deep and controlled. 3.5 hours. Enough time for word to spread, for the entire school to choose sides, for her mother to find out what was happening from the very people whose floors she mopped. Enough time to remember who she used to be. The cafeteria buzzed with electricity. Word of the confrontation had spread through Westfield Prep like wildfire, transforming lunch period into a pre-fight press conference. Students clustered around tables, phones out, recording testimonials and predictions like amateur sports commentators. "This is actually happening," breathed Madison Chen, a sophomore who'd never spoken to either Destiny or Brooke, but suddenly felt qualified to offer commentary. Like for real happening. At the center table, the one traditionally reserved for Westfield's social elite, Brooke held court. Her lunch sat untouched while she fielded questions and clarified the terms of what everyone was already calling the match. "Let me be crystal clear," she announced, her voice carrying across the hushed cafeteria. "When Destiny loses, and she will lose, she stands up at tomorrow morning's assembly and tells the entire school the truth about her family's bankruptcy. About how they lost everything. About how she's been lying to all of us for 3 years. Someone in the back called out, "What if she just doesn't show?" Brooke's smile was razor sharp. Then everyone sees the video of her backing down. Either way, the truth comes out. She pulled out her phone, showing the screen to her immediate circle. "I've already got the footage from chemistry class. 30,000 views and climbing." Across the cafeteria, Destiny sat alone at a corner table, methodically eating a peanut butter sandwich she'd packed from home. The irony wasn't lost on her. While Brooke commanded attention at the center of the social universe, she remained invisible at its edges, exactly where she'd worked so hard to stay. Jake slid into the seat across from her, his face creased with worry. "Destiny, you can't do this. It's social suicide." "As opposed to what?" Destiny's voice was calm, almost conversational. "Letting her destroy me slowly? She can't actually make you leave school. Your scholarship. My scholarship depends on maintaining a certain image." Destiny took another bite of her sandwich, chewing thoughtfully. The inspiring story of the underprivileged girl who overcame adversity. Hard to maintain that narrative when everyone knows the truth about how far we've fallen. The truth. That was the weapon Brooke wielded with surgical precision, not lies, but truth so raw and humiliating it could destroy just as effectively. "There has to be another way," Jake insisted. "There is." Destiny's eyes found Brooke across the room. "I win." The simplicity of the statement made Jake blink. "Win? Against Brooke Hamilton?" "Destiny, she's been taking private martial arts lessons since she was 6. Her parents have a whole dojo in their basement." Destiny's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. "Has she now?" At 2:47 p.m., exactly 43 minutes before the scheduled confrontation, Vice Principal Morrison's voice crackled over the intercom with a convenient announcement. Emergency faculty meeting in the main conference room. All teachers were required to attend immediately. The gymnasium would be unsupervised until further notice. Brooke's father's influence extended far beyond the school board, apparently. By 3:15, the gymnasium had transformed into an underground coliseum. Students filled the bleachers, their phones creating a constellation of recording lights. Someone had set up a professional live stream, complete with multiple camera angles and a running commentary provided by the soccer team's captain. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced Tyler Morrison, the vice principal's son, of course, "welcome to what might be the most viral moment in Westfield prep history." The viewer count on the main stream had already surpassed 50,000. Comments flooded in from across the country as word spread through social media networks. Westfield Fight was trending on 3 platforms. Destiny entered through the side door at exactly 3:29. She wore her regular school uniform white blouse, navy skirt, black shoes worn thin at the heels. Her hair was pulled back in the same simple ponytail she'd worn every day for 3 years. Nothing about her appearance suggested she was prepared for combat. Brooke made her entrance 30 seconds later, having changed into designer athletic wear that probably cost more than Destiny's monthly food budget. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd never lost anything that mattered, who'd never faced real consequences for her actions. "Terms are recorded and witnessed," Tyler announced to the crowd and the live stream. "Loser faces public humiliation and social exile. No backing out, no excuses." The gymnasium fell silent except for the soft electronic pings of phones recording history. "Ladies," Tyler called out, "are you ready?" Both girls nodded. "Then let's make some history." The gymnasium clock read 3:31, but time seemed suspended in amber. Destiny stood at center court, surrounded by hundreds of expectant faces and thousands more watching through phone screens. Yet her mind drifted to a different gymnasium entirely. 5 years ago, the Thompson family had owned a sprawling house in Westfield's most exclusive neighborhood. The basement had been converted into a training space where Sarah Thompson coached Olympic hopefuls and national champions. Destiny's trophies had lined custom-built shelves, golden sentinels standing guard over a future that seemed limitless. "Focus, baby," her mother's voice echoed from memory. "Champions aren't made in the moment of victory. They're forged in the 1,000 moments when they choose to keep going." The memory dissolved as Brooke began her warm-up routine, a series of flashy kicks and punches designed more for intimidation than preparation. The crowd oohed appreciatively at each flourish, phones angling for better shots of her designer athletic wear and carefully choreographed movements. Destiny closed her eyes and let muscle memory guide her through a breathing exercise that had once been as natural as walking. 4 counts in, hold for 4, 4 counts out. Her heart rate slowed, her shoulders dropped. For the first time in 3 years, she stopped trying to make herself invisible. In the 3rd row of bleachers, a familiar figure caught her attention. Mrs. Rodriguez, the night custodian, had slipped in through a side door. She wore the same blue uniform that Destiny's mother would put on in 2 hours when her shift began. Their eyes met across the gymnasium, and Mrs. Rodriguez offered a small nod, not of encouragement, but of recognition. One working-class woman acknowledging another's daughter about to fight for dignity. The sight sent Destiny's mind spiraling back to the night everything changed. She'd been 14, fresh off her 3rd consecutive national championship, when her father had gathered the family in their marble-floored kitchen to explain that everything they owned was built on borrowed money and broken promises. "Daddy's business partner took the investor's money," he'd said, his voice hollow with shame. "All of it. We have to sell the house, the cars, everything. I'm so sorry, baby girl. I'm so damn sorry." Her mother had held her as she sobbed, not for the trophies or the house or even the training facility, but for the look of absolute defeat in her father's eyes. 3 weeks later, He was gone. Not dead, but disappeared, unable to face the wreckage of his choices. A note on the kitchen counter had been his only goodbye. "Some men run when the walls close in," her mother had said the next morning, packing their remaining possessions into garbage bags. "We're not runners. We're fighters. And fighters always find a way to adapt." Sarah Thompson had been right about the fighting part. She'd taken a job cleaning office buildings at night, then added the Westfield Prep custodial contract when Destiny qualified for the academic scholarship. Every evening, she'd put on that blue uniform and clean the very classrooms where her daughter sat during the day, invisible by design. Destiny's eyes found the corner of the gymnasium where her mother would start her cleaning routine in exactly 97 minutes. The irony was breathtaking. In less than 2 hours, Sarah Thompson would be mopping the same floor where her daughter was about to fight for the right to remain invisible. "You ready for this, champion?" Brooke's voice cut through the memory like a knife. The word champion hit differently now. Once, it had been a badge of honor, an identity worn with pride. Now it felt like mockery, a reminder of everything she'd lost and could never reclaim. But as Destiny looked around the gymnasium, at the eager faces hungry for her destruction, at the phones broadcasting her humiliation to the world, at Mrs. Rodriguez, who understood what it meant to work for dignity, something shifted inside her chest. Her stance changed almost imperceptibly, her weight distributed evenly between her feet, her core engaged with the automatic precision of thousands of hours of training. The careful slouch she'd cultivated for 3 years straightened into something that looked almost regal. "I want everyone here to understand something," Destiny said, her voice carrying clearly across the suddenly quiet gymnasium. "This isn't about winning or losing a fight." Brooke smirked. "Getting cold feet already? This is about truth." Destiny's gaze swept the bleachers, meeting eyes that had ignored her for 3 years. "You want to know who I really am? You want to know what the Thompson family has become?" She paused, letting the question hang in the air. "Fine. Let me show you." Her mother's voice whispered from memory. "Champions aren't made by what they win, baby. They're made by what they survive." Destiny had survived the bankruptcy, the foreclosure, the abandonment. She'd survived 3 years of carefully constructed invisibility, of watching her mother clean floors while she pretended not to know her. She'd survived Brooke's friendship turning to cruelty, loyalty transforming into calculated humiliation. "You think losing everything made me weak?" Destiny continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "You think it broke me? You think it made me less than what I was?" She rolled her shoulders back, and for just a moment, the scholarship student disappeared entirely. In her place stood someone who had once commanded respect on national stages, who had learned that true strength wasn't about what you possessed, but what you could endure. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I am different than I was 5 years ago." A smile played at the corners of her mouth, the first genuine expression of joy anyone at Westfield had ever seen from her. "Maybe I'm something better." The gymnasium had fallen completely silent. Even the live stream comments had paused their frantic scrolling. In the sudden hush, Destiny's next words carried like a promise. "Champions aren't made by what they win. They're made by what they survive." Her mother's wisdom, spoken in her own voice, delivered to a crowd that was about to learn the difference between having strength and being strong. Brooke's confident smirk faltered for the first time. Something in Destiny's posture, in her suddenly unguarded expression, triggered a memory that made her take an involuntary step backward. She'd seen that look before. Years ago, in a different gymnasium, when Destiny Thompson had been a name that mattered and defeat had seemed impossible. But that girl was gone, wasn't she? That girl had been buried under bankruptcy and broken dreams and 3 years of carefully maintained invisibility. Looking at Destiny now, Brooke wasn't entirely sure. The first exchange happened so fast that half the audience missed it entirely. Brooke lunged forward with a practiced right hook, the kind of move that had dominated her private martial arts lessons for the past decade. It was textbook perfect, technically sound, exactly what her expensive instructors had drilled into her. Destiny wasn't there when it arrived. She'd shifted her weight to her back foot, letting Brooke's momentum carry her past the target. It was subtle, economical, the kind of movement that looked like luck to untrained eyes but felt like poetry to anyone who understood combat. "Lucky dodge," Brooke snarled, spinning to face her again. The crowd pressed closer, phones angling for better shots. Tyler Morrison provided running commentary for the live stream. Hamilton with the aggressive opening, Thompson playing defense early. But it wasn't defense exactly. Destiny was reading, analyzing Brooke's stance, her foot placement, the way she telegraphed each movement with tiny shifts in her shoulders. It was like watching someone decode a language written in muscle memory. Brooke attacked again, this time with a combination that had earned her first place in her dojo's annual tournament. Left jab, right cross, spinning heel kick. The movements were sharp, precise, executed with the confidence of someone who'd never faced a real opponent. Destiny absorbed the first punch on her forearm, deflected the second with a gentle redirection that sent Brooke stumbling, and stepped inside the kick's arc like she'd choreographed the whole sequence herself. "What the hell?" someone muttered from the bleachers. For 3 seconds, they stood chest to chest, close enough that Destiny could smell Brooke's expensive perfume mixed with the sharp scent of adrenaline. Close enough to see the first flicker of uncertainty in her former best friend's eyes. "Your form is excellent," Destiny said quietly, so only Brooke could hear. "Very textbook. Your instructors must be proud." Then she was gone again, creating distance with a fluid backstep that looked effortless but positioned her perfectly for whatever came next. The psychological warfare was surgical in its precision. Each dodge was just a little too clean, each movement just a little too controlled. Destiny wasn't just avoiding Brooke's attacks, she was making them look clumsy by comparison. "Stop playing around!" Brooke's voice cracked with frustration. She'd landed exactly 0 meaningful strikes, while Destiny hadn't even attempted to counterattack. The crowd was beginning to notice. Murmurs rippled through the bleachers as students who'd expected a quick victory started to realize they were watching something else entirely. "Is she holding back?" Jake whispered to the girl beside him. Destiny was doing more than holding back. She was conducting a masterclass in distance management, using Brooke's aggression against her like a martial arts demonstration. Each wild swing created openings that she could have exploited a dozen different ways. Each frustrated charge left Brooke more exposed, more vulnerable. But she didn't strike. Not yet. "Fight back!" Brooke screamed, launching into a flurry of kicks that would have overwhelmed most opponents. Destiny flowed around them like water around stones. Her breathing remained controlled, her expression almost serene. When Brooke's heel kick passed inches from her face, she actually smiled. The crowd's mood was shifting. The bloodthirsty excitement was giving way to confused fascination. Comments on the live stream reflected the change. Why isn't she fighting back? This is weird. Something's not right here. Mrs. Rodriguez, still watching from the third row, leaned forward with growing recognition. She'd seen this before, years ago in highlight reels and sports broadcasts, when Sarah Thompson's daughter had been famous for her impossible composure under pressure. "You can't just run forever," Brooke panted, sweat beading on her forehead despite the gymnasium's air conditioning. "I'm not running," Destiny replied, her voice steady despite 5 minutes of constant movement. "I'm evaluating." The word choice was deliberate, clinical, not fighting or defending, but evaluating like Brooke was a problem to be solved rather than an opponent to be defeated. It was the cruelest insult imaginable, delivered without malice. Brooke's next attack was pure rage, a wild haymaker that telegraphed its arrival from 3 zip codes away. Destiny caught her wrist mid-swing, her grip gentle but immovable. For a heartbeat, they stood frozen in that position. The gymnasium fell silent except for the soft electronic hum of recording devices and Brooke's labored breathing. "I could have ended this 12 different ways by now," Destiny said softly, her voice carrying just far enough for the front rows to hear. "Do you know why I haven't?" Brooke yanked her arm free, stumbling backward. For the first time since elementary school, she looked genuinely afraid. "Because I wanted you to understand something first." Destiny's stance shifted almost imperceptibly, weight flowing from her heels to the balls of her feet. "You've been fighting a ghost for 3 years. Someone who doesn't exist anymore. Someone who was too proud, too naive, too comfortable to understand what real strength looks like." The change in her posture was subtle, but unmistakable to anyone who'd spent years studying combat. Her center of gravity lowered, her hands found their natural position relaxed but ready, positioned with the unconscious precision of thousands of hours of training. "The girl you're trying to humiliate?" Destiny's smile was sad but genuine. "She died the night her father walked out. What you're fighting now is what grew from her ashes." Brooke launched herself forward in a desperate final assault, bringing every expensive lesson, every private tutorial, every ounce of privileged training to bear. Destiny moved like water, like wind, like something that existed between the spaces where attacks could land. She didn't block or parry. She simply wasn't there when Brooke's strikes arrived, flowing around them with a grace that made the whole exchange look choreographed. The crowd was on its feet now, phones forgotten as they witnessed something that transcended high school drama. This wasn't a fight anymore. It was art. "Jesus Christ," Tyler breathed into his live stream microphone. "She's not even trying. She's just dancing." But Destiny wasn't dancing. She was demonstrating the difference between learning martial arts and living them, between practicing techniques and embodying principles, between fighting and understanding that sometimes the greatest victory was showing your opponent exactly how outmatched they truly were. Brooke's final kick a spinning heel that would have been devastating if it had connected past harmlessly through empty air. Her momentum carried her in a complete circle, leaving her dizzy and disoriented. When she steadied herself, Destiny was standing exactly where she'd started, breathing normally, not even winded. "Are you done?" Destiny asked gently. The question wasn't mocking or cruel. It was genuinely curious, like she was asking if Brooke needed water or wanted to sit down. Brooke's face cycled through confusion, frustration, and finally something that might have been the first stirrings of genuine fear. She'd thrown everything she had at a target that had never seemed to be in danger, never seemed to be trying, never seemed to consider her a legitimate threat. "What are you?" Brooke whispered. Destiny's expression softened with something that looked almost like pity. "I'm what you made me." "I'm someone who learned that losing everything doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerous. Because when you have nothing left to lose, you can afford to be exactly who you really are." The gymnasium held its collective breath. 57,000 viewers on the live stream waited for what came next. In the third row, Mrs. Rodriguez smiled with quiet pride. And in that moment of perfect silence, everyone finally understood that they weren't watching Destiny Thompson fight. They were watching her choose not to. The silence stretched like a held breath. Brooke stood in the center of the gymnasium, chest heaving, designer athletic wear soaked with sweat and frustration. Around them, hundreds of students and thousands of online viewers waited for something, anything to break the unbearable tension. Destiny remained perfectly still, her breathing controlled, her posture relaxed but ready. She looked like someone waiting for a bus, not someone who'd just demonstrated the martial arts equivalent of a master class. "This isn't over," Brooke snarled, wiping sweat from her eyes. "I didn't come here to play games." "Neither did I." "Then fight me!" "Actually fight me." Destiny tilted her head slightly, studying Brooke with the clinical interest of a scientist observing a specimen. Why? The simple question hung in the air like a challenge. Why fight someone who posed no real threat? Why engage with violence when control was so much more devastating? Why give Brooke what she wanted when denying it was so much more effective? "Because I'm going to destroy you!" Brooke's voice cracked with desperation. "I'm going to make you disappear! I'm going to—" She lunged forward with everything she had left, a wild, desperate grab aimed at Destiny's throat. It was sloppy, emotional, the kind of move that would have earned her a lecture from any competent instructor. Destiny caught her wrist with surgical precision. The catch wasn't violent or dramatic. Destiny's hand simply appeared in the exact right place at the exact right moment, wrapping around Brooke's wrist with the gentle firmness of someone plucking a flower. But the technique behind that catch, the angle, the leverage, the way her fingers found the precise pressure points, that was pure artistry. Brooke's forward momentum stopped instantly. Her feet continued moving for a fraction of a second before her brain caught up to the fact that her body was no longer under her control. "I was 3-time national junior karate champion," Destiny said conversationally, as if she were discussing the weather. "I didn't lose that when my family lost everything." I chose to put it away. With the slightest adjustment of pressure, she guided Brooke to her knees. Not forced guided, the way a dance partner might lead through a particularly complex step. "Holy shit," someone whispered from the bleachers. "That's the crane's wing lock. I've seen it in competitions." The recognition rippled through the crowd like wildfire. Students who'd dismissed Destiny for 3 years suddenly saw her clearly for the first time. The live stream chat exploded with comments as viewers recognized the technique from professional tournaments. "Destiny Thompson," breathed a senior who'd been at Westfield long enough to remember the news stories. "Jesus Christ, she's actually Destiny Thompson." Brooke struggled against the hold, but it was like fighting gravity itself. Every movement only made the lock more secure, more inescapable. "Let me go," she hissed. "In a moment." Destiny's voice remained gentle, almost soothing. "But first, I need you to understand something. Championship trophies can be broken. Houses can be foreclosed. Families can lose everything they own." She paused, letting the words settle. "But character? Character can't be taken away. It can only be revealed." With a fluid motion that looked effortless but required years of training to execute properly, Destiny released the hold and stepped back. Brooke collapsed forward, catching herself on her hands, gasping. The gymnasium erupted. Students leaped to their feet, phones capturing every angle of Brooke's defeat and Destiny's quiet dignity. The live stream viewer count had surpassed 100,000, comments flowing too fast to read. But Destiny wasn't looking at the crowd. She was looking down at Brooke, her expression free of triumph or anger or anything except a kind of tired compassion. "It's over," she said quietly. "It was over the moment you made this about who we used to be instead of who we are now." The gymnasium buzzed with electric energy as students slowly processed what they'd witnessed. Phones continued recording, capturing the aftermath of a confrontation that had transformed from schoolyard drama into something approaching legend. The livestream viewer count had broken 150,000, comments flooding in from around the world. Brooke remained on her knees, staring at the polished floor where her carefully constructed superiority had shattered like glass. Her designer athletic wear was damp with sweat and something that might have been tears. For the first time in her 17 years, she looked genuinely small. "The terms," Tyler Morrison called out, his voice cutting through the murmur of the crowd. "The terms were clear. Public confession and—" "I know what the terms were." Brooke's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried in the sudden hush. She struggled to her feet, her movements unsteady, her usual grace abandoned. "I know what I owe." She turned toward the bleachers, toward the phones and the thousands of viewers watching her humiliation broadcast in real time. When she spoke, her voice cracked with something raw and unfamiliar, genuine emotion breaking through years of practiced performance. I owe Destiny Thompson an apology. The words came out stilted, formal, like she was reading from a script she'd never wanted to learn. I owe her more than an apology. Destiny stood quietly, waiting. Not gloating, not praising her advantage, just present in the way that champions learn to be present, fully engaged with the moment without being consumed by it. I betrayed my best friend when she needed me most, Brooke continued, her voice growing stronger but no less painful to hear. When her family lost everything, I abandoned her to protect my own reputation. I chose social status over loyalty. I chose cruelty over kindness. The confession landed like physical blows. Students who'd witnessed years of Brooke's casual malice suddenly saw it for what it was, not strength, but the desperate performance of someone terrified of falling from grace herself. And then, Brooke's voice broke entirely. When she found a way to rebuild her life with dignity and hard work, I tried to destroy that too, because seeing her survive reminded me of everything shallow and worthless about myself. Mrs. Rodriguez, still watching from the third row, nodded slowly. She'd seen this moment before, not the specifics, but the shape of it. The moment when cruelty finally looked in the mirror and saw itself clearly. I can't undo what I've done, Brooke said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. But I can start with this. Destiny Thompson is twice the person I am. She always was. And everyone in this school should know that she's earned her place here not through charity, but through character. The gymnasium fell silent except for the soft electronic hum of recording devices. Destiny stepped forward, closing the distance between them until she stood directly in front of her former best friend. Thank you, she said simply. That took courage. Not as much courage as you've shown every day for 3 years. Brooke's smile was watery but genuine. I've been watching you, you know. Watching you work twice as hard as everyone else, excel in every class, help other students who were struggling. I've been watching you be everything I pretended to be. We both made choices, Destiny replied gently. The past doesn't have to define the future. For you, maybe. Brooke's laugh was bitter but not unkind. I think my future's about to look very different after tonight. She pulled out her phone, fingers moving across the screen with practiced efficiency. Within seconds, notifications began pinging throughout the gymnasium as her social media accounts updated simultaneously. $5,000 to the Westfield Preparatory Scholarship Fund, she announced to the crowd and the cameras. Donated in honor of Destiny Thompson, who taught me that losing everything can be the beginning of finding yourself. The transfer confirmation appeared on her screen, and she turned it toward the phones recording everything. The gesture was simple but profound wealth weaponized for healing instead of harm. There's something else, Brooke said, her voice gaining strength. Something everyone should know about the Thompson family. Destiny tensed, unsure where this was leading. Mrs. Sarah Thompson works here every night as a custodian, Brooke continued, her voice carrying clearly across the gymnasium. But what most of you don't know is that she's also one of the most accomplished martial arts coaches in the country. She trained Olympic athletes. She coached national champions. She could be working anywhere in the world. The crowd listened with rapt attention as Brooke's words painted a picture they'd never considered. She works here because this is where her daughter goes to school. Because she wanted to be close to Destiny, to support her dreams even if it meant taking a job that society looks down on. Mrs. Thompson isn't just a custodian. She's a mother who sacrificed her career so her daughter could have a future. In the gymnasium doorway, a figure in a blue uniform had appeared. Sarah Thompson stood silently, having arrived for her evening shift to find her daughter's moment of triumph broadcast to the world. Her face showed pride and pain in equal measure, pride in Destiny's strength, pain at having their story exposed. Destiny saw her mother and felt her carefully constructed composure finally crack. 3 years of hiding, 3 years of pretending not to know the woman who mopped these floors, 3 years of protecting each other through silence. All of it dissolved in a single moment of recognition. "Mom!" she called out, her voice carrying across the gymnasium. Sarah Thompson walked onto the court, her work uniform incongruous among the athletic gear and designer clothes. Mother and daughter met in the center, embracing while hundreds of phones captured their reunion. "I'm so proud of you," Sarah whispered, loud enough for the closest microphones to catch. "Not for fighting, for choosing when not to fight." When they separated, Destiny turned to address the crowd one final time. Her voice was clear, strong, carrying the authority of someone who'd learned that true power came from vulnerability. "Real champions don't just win for themselves," she said, the words flowing with the certainty of lived truth. "They lift others up. They turn their pain into purpose. They remember that strength isn't about what you can take, it's about what you can give." The words became instant social media gold, quoted and shared across platforms within minutes. But in the gymnasium, they simply hung in the air like a benediction, transforming a moment of personal triumph into something larger. As students began filing out, chattering excitedly about what they'd witnessed, Destiny found herself surrounded by classmates who'd ignored her for 3 years. They wanted to know about her training, her championships, her plans. They wanted to bask in reflected glory. But it was Jake who stayed behind, helping to clean up while the crowds dispersed. "So," he said casually, "think you might consider coaching the school's martial arts club?" Destiny laughed, the first truly carefree sound anyone at Westfield had ever heard from her. "I think I might know someone who'd be perfect for that job." Through the gymnasium windows, the sun was setting over Westfield Prep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new stories, new opportunities for Grace. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, Destiny Thompson walked the halls of her school without hiding. She was exactly who she was meant to be. Sometimes the quietest person in the room has the loudest story to tell. Beat Stories finds these hidden champions, the overlooked, the underestimated, the ones who surprise everyone when it matters most. Subscribe if you believe everyone deserves their moment to shine. Hit the bell so you never miss when an ordinary day becomes extraordinary.
What happened today isn't just a story, it's a reminder. Silence protects systems, but courage rewrites them. At Beat Stories, we don't just watch change, we document it. Subscribe for more real stories that challenge power and amplify truth.